Hello, everybody. Good morning to, I guess, me, and good night to Will. My name's Matt. We're doing this lovely podcast for a fourth consecutive week. Holy crap, we're almost a month old.
Yeah.
We're almost a month old, and that's the next milestone to hit. I said in episode 2, I was like, damn, the biggest milestone to get over is doing a second episode, but then it's like every month or every time milestone that we hit is another thing where we're just like, damn, we're actually like, I don't want to say shambling on, but we're actually making this work. We're making this work. So I don't know, congrats to us, I guess. Will, how are you doing this week?
I'm pretty good. I just had so I've talked about it a little bit on like my channels. I've had some like paperwork stuff I've had to take care of, just because like things affected by COVID, right, and not being able to travel as freely and things like that. So that's been kind of haunting the back of my mind, but I've resolved most of it for the time being, kind of in a waiting phase. So that's good.
I feel sorry for anyone having to do anything bureaucracy related right now. Like, I feel sorry for anyone who has to like cancel a phone contract or talk to someone about internet or like call an embassy. Like, I feel so sorry for anyone having to do that right now, because dear Lord, is everything just like a giant clusterfuck. I can't. I also need to set a timer from beginning of episode to first swear, and I need to like keep that going.
I'm like pretty sure it's gotten faster.
It got faster this week. It got faster this week. Last week I think I just slipped it in whatever, but yeah, go Matt Demers.
Oh man.
So yeah, everything's just like, I don't want to say it's a mess. Like we actually had a conversation on Discord, like we usually do, about like in text before these episodes of like, what do we want to talk about this week? And there was almost like a thing where we're just like, let's not talk about COVID. Let's not make this the longest running. I was gonna open the episode with a joke being like, yeah, welcome to the longest running COVID gaming podcast, 2020. But yeah, I don't know. Things are still going, and things are, not the same. Things are pretty much the same. I don't know. Things haven't exactly gotten worse on our end, or on my end anyway. So Canada's still pretty.
Yeah, that's good.
Still, Canada's taking it more seriously. Like we've gotten like the formal like lockdown, warnings and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. I don't know.
Right on.
I got Animal Crossing. And
I was gonna say though, that's a ray of sunshine.
Yeah, I know. After 2 weeks of this podcast, or 3 weeks of this podcast, saying, "Oh man, I am gonna hold out. I'm gonna give it a month. I'm gonna avoid FOMO." This is what usually happens, but I'm proud of myself this time because I lasted a lot longer than I usually do.
I remember even last week, right? Because it had like come out right before, and we were talking about how I just started it, and then you were continuing to talk about how, well, I'm gonna wait, right? I'll probably get it, but I'm gonna wait. And then I just remember, like, I'm pretty sure it was like 2 days after I like logged into Twitter, and I just see you like, well, so got my island in Animal Crossing, and I was like,
my tweet is literally, "Yep, I broke, but I'm ashamed of it, but." Whatever. I'm not stressing it too much.
Well, yeah.
No. Of course, like one of those things is like I've talked to a couple friends who we were almost like buddies with it, where we were just like, okay, we're gonna hold out on it. We're gonna like play.
Yeah.
We're gonna play like Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon or something that we gets the same feeling. Where we like talked through like why we were like holding out on it, and then I kind of just broke and was like, you know what, I've got the money, it's a good game, from what I've seen streaming it and stuff like that. I think what caved, or what got me caving, is just like seeing a lot of streams, and that rant after the stream I had maybe like 2 weeks ago about Nintendo Online, kind of, it wasn't as founded, I guess.
Well, yeah, I'm curious. I don't know how much experience you've had yet with the actual online social portion of it, but I'm curious because I know you felt very strongly just generally about Nintendo's like online structures and what they do with it. What's your take on it in New Horizon?
The funny thing is that like I have to give a small like Nintendo has a thing where they recognize what quality of life changes are, but if they can make 10 of them in one go, they'll only make 7. You know, they won't they have to recognize some of the quality of life changes that they're missing out. And for some reason I get the feeling that they don't put some of them in because they want to keep that kind of like old school jankiness, or they just like are so ignorant. I don't want to say so ignorant, but like we said last week, there's a difference between like power gaming and a difference between you know, the audience that they're trying to reach and the vision that they're trying to stay to. So for online, it's like I was actually really surprised that like when you add people to the best friends list, it's like you can see them persistently in like their online status, or you can just message them, you know, from the phone. And that those are features every other game does, but it's like when it's in a Nintendo game and I'm like, wow, I'm getting notifications that my friends are coming online. Like
welcome to 2005.
And I can do things about it, and like I can see whether they're like, you know, imagine like Destiny. If you added someone to friend, you'd be able to see like what quest they were in or like something like that, or you'd be able to see like what they were doing. Right. And just even being able to see like, oh, they're available or they're traveling to another town. It's like, oh, wow, like congrats Nintendo. Thank you for like, you know, getting there and being able to like just send them a message. I think Nintendo's always really like scared about like perverts and like, you know, creepers and harassers and stuff like that too. Sensitive. And because they have a very like do you remember Swap Note? Do you ever have a DS with the like or no, it was 3DS.
I had a 3DS, but I do not remember. I also didn't like use it extensively.
Oh no, totally. With the 3DS, there used to be an app called Swap Note, and you'd be able to just like draw mail messages, you know, like draw like things, and they actually just deleted the entire thing. They didn't change it. They literally just discontinued it entirely, and that's just like that's almost unprecedented when so many people used it like so like and loved it to the point where like hacking and homebrewing your 3DS, you could get that back, or you could get a homebrew like version of it because people just really liked it, and because of, you know, people complaining or people having issues with like it's like any chat program for kids growing up, they're gonna find a way to use it in ways not intended.
Well, yeah.
So sorry, going back to the Nintendo Online stuff, it's like I've hosted a bunch of people, and I've hosted a bunch of people, and I've visited someone once, and I'm pretty happy with it. Like the farthest away the person I've hosted is California, and I didn't really have any kind of like issues. And I've had a couple people from the West Coast visit my some people from Toronto and some people from the West Coast visit my town, and it's not like there's any kind of like huge lag or anything like that, especially for the first month. But I think that I love that they have the dodo codes, which is like you can open your town's gate and
it's very convenient,
have a 5-letter and number code in order to make the match if you aren't already friends on the Switch or whatever. I like that because which reminds me, I have to check my turnips prices today. But I know I'm ass deep in the stock market already. But the thing is that in order to invite people to your town before in Animal Crossing New Leaf, which was the 3DS one, you had to add them as friends on your 3DS, and that takes forever because you'd have to like say that for people who don't know, there's a gimmick where you buy turnips, and it's a pun based on the stock market, where you buy turnips on Sunday, and then every day in game, yours or other people's prices change for how much you can sell those turnips for. And the idea is that you're buying them low and you're selling them high. So for some people, if they get like an amazing turnip selling price, like this can be like I bought for 92, and there are some towns that sell for like 560. So you can make a decent amount of profit. You can quickly like have money not be an issue in Animal Crossing. And so the people that have a good sell price can sometimes open their towns up to the public and have people come in, sell their turnips, and then leave. And usually like they'll leave you a tip of a certain percentage of like what you've made. So you can make some decent money with that as well. And before every time you did that, you'd have to just like take a bunch of people's friend codes down and then add them on 3DS and then open your town, get 4 of them in at a time, and then do it again. Geez. And now it's like, okay, I can open my gates, get a dodo code, send it to people, and that's it. And then, you know, after I kick people out afterwards, it's like, okay, I can generate a new dodo code really easy. And that's the main thing where I was like, damn, Nintendo, you know what you're doing. You know how awkward your online systems are, and you made it just a tiny, tiny bit easier. And like I said, that was one of the 7 like quality of life changes that they made for New Leaf, and that was it. Because they won't give us the ability to bulk craft anything. They won't give us the ability to craft more than one thing at a time. But they'll give us dodo codes.
Okay, but is that... But... Okay, so bulk crafting. Okay, so here's that. Actually, let's go back to the travel, because something came up when I was streaming, and I had people come in, and I've been just weirdly raving about the whole like experience of visiting islands in Animal Crossing New Horizon, because so for those of you who haven't played it or watched it. They basically simulate like actually going to the airport and then like flying, and if someone's coming in, they like show you the, I guess, like flight info as like a ticker like you would see at airports, and it's very well done. And if you're flying to someone, the pilot like tells you what time it is and the weather, although I think the weather's always the same, but things like that. And then so I've been talking about that, and I've been mentioning how maybe it's because of the current times, or maybe it's because I'm now living in Korea, where like obviously most of the people that I'm friends with on the Switch are like back in the States. But to me, like for some reason that just stood out, whereas in most other games, like the journey was never a big part for me. And then someone mentioned, but don't you think it's like too slow that you have to wait? Like every time someone comes, you have to like see their ticker, and then like everyone has to pause and watch it.
I think
I thought about it.
I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, so I thought about it, and personally, so I want to hear your opinion, but I thought, like, I can find it maybe annoying if you wanted to do, like, a big host, right? If you wanted to get a bunch of people, you know, like, I don't know if there's even a max, but let's say, like, 20, 30 people to, like, hang out or do whatever. Like, then it could get a little annoying, right? But you also have to do it only once. And so, personally, I was like, I mean, I don't know. It's, like, it takes, maximum, like, 20 seconds per person. And you know, it's kind of, you're all like watching the same screen. So to me, it's a cool experience, but I wonder from your perspective as someone who cares about quality of life, QL on Nintendo games and their like interface, is that a janky thing, or is that an experience thing?
I think it's a way to hide the jank, because like you have to I think it's a way to mask a lot of loading and a lot of like connection stuff. And like, even though they do have like a literal loading screen, they do have like it's like 5 dots, and it's like there's 4 dots of like loading, and then there's 1 dot that's they're on their way.
But it's a plane.
It's still the same thing. But you have to, I think part of it to keep in mind is that Nintendo are working with multiple versions of their hardware now. They're working with the Switch, like the Pocket Switch, or sorry, the Switch Lite, which is you can't dock it. You're permanently handheld. And then you've got the Switch, like the regular Switch, that can be docked, and more importantly, can be used with wired internet. So they're not only compensating for that, but they're compensating for like different internet, where some people can be Wi-Fi or the host can be Wi-Fi, and it has to work, because like a thing with Nintendo stuff is that they don't have settings that like one of the things that I was trying to find out is whether you could mute the music, because like I figured it would be a good opportunity for Chill Hop to be like, okay, here's an Animal Crossing playlist. You know, if you're tired of the hourly music or tired of the regular music, you can mute the in-game music and still keep all the sound effects. But they don't even give you that. They don't even give you like a deep.
Oh wait, really?
Yeah, you can't. There's a settings menu on the main menu, like on the title screen, and all that's in there is the ability to like delete characters from your town, and instructions to how to delete your entire town.
You're telling me
that
I can delete selected characters,
not villagers
from my town,
not villagers, player characters. So yeah,
dang it.
I know, right? So it's like if someone created a character on your save, and then you just like wanted to delete them. So that's the only thing in the options menu. So like getting back to my point is that like Nintendo don't like pulling back the curtain and giving you like, they don't like letting you see where things are made, if that makes sense. They don't like exposing the magic, so to speak. So
that's true. Yeah.
So because of that, they are not going to have a bunch of like online options in terms of quality. They expect it to just work, and people expect it to just work, because you have to assume that the person using it is a child or a preteen who isn't going to go on. They don't even want to be like, okay, we're going to make them go on the internet to troubleshoot. You know, they don't even want to make you do that. They want to make sure that their experience, even if it's hidden, like even if the jank is hidden, they want to hide that jank so that it's the illusion of smoothness. So, I mean, it's not like fighting games where you're setting like your input or like your input delay with like like the person you're playing with, or something like that. There's not a lot of like lag related problems you can have. Like for like yesterday, I had someone over at my my town, and we were like just swinging nets at each other, and I was trying to like sync it at the same time, and I was wondering, I was like, how much of this is the game like guessing what she's doing or getting an input for a swing, and just executing it on my end, even though there's a ton of lag. Like how much is it lag, and then how much is it the game kind of like fudging what that person is actually doing, you know? So if they're running like right to left or something like that, how much of it, if I'm seeing them stop, you know, or if I'm seeing them like stutter or switch directions or whatever, how much of that is maybe lag, you know? I can't tell.
Right.
Because it's not like we have the bars, like indicator of how good or bad their connection is. And ultimately it doesn't really matter. It doesn't, like, there's nothing that's going to be impacted by that. In the 3DS version, there used to be mini games and stuff, and I think you eventually will probably get access to something like that where you can go to an island and play mini games with your friends. But there's nothing really to like do with people at the moment besides them coming over and like checking your stuff and, you know, fishing maybe, or, you know, you can spam emotes at them, but there isn't like anything like super lag dependent to do with people. And I think it's just like I said, it's Nintendo hiding possible jank, and it's trying to make the experience seamless, you know, besides the connecting to the internet, you know, thing. The message of connecting to the internet, hiding that entire process behind like the facade of flying, you know, of someone coming, you know, they're boarding their flight and they're traveling now, and, you know, you see them flying in really low over your town and whatever. All that is to just make it immersive. And if anything, Animal Crossing's ethos is to be as immersive as possible. So I don't know. I think it's just par for the course. I don't think it's too strange.
Yeah, I mean, I again personally, I enjoyed it. I was very pleased to see it. Yeah, I don't. I mean, again, it's like, I guess it's a given, right? Given what like what Animal Crossing is, but when I first visited someone in California, because obviously I was quote unquote time traveling because I'm in Korea and my system's on Korean time. And I was just like, oh, this is so exciting.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
actually visiting them in California. I got all giddy about it. So
Yeah, well, I mean, like that's the irony is that people there's a divisiveness over whether fudging with your system clock in order to get either ahead to the next day or like behind in order to like. I broke my time traveling rule yesterday.
I saw that, Matt.
I know.
I don't know.
There's a what's it called? Like I said, it's a divisiveness where some people are just purists where they're like, okay, no time traveling, no like, you want to stay true to the experience and if you missed out on something like I did, I missed out on turnips. Turnips are only for sale, like I said, Sunday, but they're only for sale until noon. And I woke up like really late yesterday.
Oh,
yeah, they're only on sale until noon. So I woke up in the afternoon, or like I woke up late or something like that. And I'm wandering around my town, wondering where she is, the vendor. And then I look it up. I'm like, oh crap! I don't want to wait until next Sunday in order to get this. So, close the app, change my system clock back to like 11:30, go get my thing, go buy turnips, and then fast forward or close the app again,
return.
And so the idea was just like, okay, I'm not gonna wait another week, I'm not gonna wait another week just to do this one thing. And I don't know, I'm usually very flexible.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of getting into the technical side of the game, but since
fine.
I don't know a lot about it. So then if I, like, say if your turnip merchant is there, like on your island right now, and I visit your island, can I also buy?
Yes, I think so.
Gotcha.
I think so.
So,
like, if you were so late, but you like just happened to find.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's what happened because I was commentating League of Legends for League of Legends Champions Korea, the Korean League, the Sunday, and I just like didn't have time to log in before, and then we started at 3. Obviously, we did like tests before that, and then we ended at 11:30. But in the middle, we had like a dinner break, so I was like, oh, this is a good chance to log in. And I logged in and like all my shops were open still, it was before 10 p.m. and I just couldn't find her. So I was like, oh, I don't know why I missed out. I don't know what happened, but oh well. And then I moved on. But then I guess once it ended, I could have like hit up some of my friends in North America and be like, yo,
I
buy some turnips.
Enable my bad financial decisions. I
got it.
But yeah, with that, it's a weird thing where your turnips don't go bad. Like the in-game thing is that they don't want you hoarding turnips forever. So if you like, if I took my game right now and time traveled to next Sunday, all my turnips would go bad. And if I also if I time traveled in reverse, I think at all, I want to say at all, but maybe like past Sunday, I don't know, my turnips would also go bad. So the idea is that like if you're locked into that investment of buying all those turnips, you aren't time traveling around to try to like get a better price. They want to, I think those turnips, at least probably in game, are marked with the timestamp of when they were bought or something. So yeah, I don't know. Time traveling for some people, especially streamers, I noticed that people who like really wanted to go hard with Animal Crossing streaming, you can only do so much in a day. And like we said in the previous podcast, they gate things per day. So if you build a bridge, or build a museum or whatever, you can't get access to them until the next day or whatever. So people will set their system clock farther and farther and farther ahead in order to get access to new content, to be able to stream, or to be able to just like find it faster. I find a lot of people who are filling out wikis with like information about fish and stuff like that, fish, or which ones are leaving or which ones are still there. It's a lot of it's coming from time travelers who are like probably in July or something by now. I don't know. Like I think, like I said, one of the things that make me nervous that made me nervous about the game is that Nintendo is doing holidays by updates as opposed to having them already in game. So like for Easter, they're gonna have an update to the game that unlocks all the Easter like stuff because they don't want people going so far forward in time that they've already experienced the entire game, already experienced all the events, ruined it for other people, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know. That's what makes me nervous is like I understand why they're doing it, and I think it's potentially a good move, but it's Nintendo and online stuff, and that's what made me nervous about it.
It's gonna take so much for Nintendo to gain Matt's faith.
Hey man, if anything, I keep a ledger, man. I keep a mental notepad of all the stuff.
Poor Nintendo.
I know, right? But going back to the original point, I guess it's like I said, quality of life stuff. Like when you're hunting for a specific fish, and you've like dug up all these like clams to make into fish bait, and you have to make like 200 bait.
That's what clams are used for?
Oh, dude, you're missing out. You get those manila clams, and then you go to the crafting
I've just been
thing.
Selling them.
Oh man, Will, no. You can't see my camera, but my hands are on my forehead. Like, so manila clams, you go to the workbench and you make them into fish bait. And the thing is that what it does is that when you go to a body of water, you toss a fish bait in and it spawns a fish. So,
but it's not like higher rarity fish, right? It's just random fish.
But it's still the controlled nature of being able to go to a pond and spawn a fish. Like, that's great.
Oh.
But if you have an inventory full of clams, because they don't stack, they each individually take up
which is why I've been selling them.
Yeah, you sit there and you basically are just mashing A over and over again, because you're trying to just craft a whole bunch of the bait. And thank God, like I said, 7 out of 10 quality of life changes. At least Nintendo, when you craft something and go back and say, I want to keep crafting, the option to keep crafting is the first one. So you can just mash A.
Right.
And it memorizes where your last cursor was in terms of like the last thing you crafted. Yeah, you're right. So if I didn't like I said, I'm sitting here and I'm complaining about it, but it could be worse. They could have put that as the second one.
By far.
They could, or the second text option. They could have forgot where your cursor was, and they would do that.
You're saying that because of Zelda, aren't you?
Well, I'm saying that experience, like with experience with other game. Oh yeah. The cursor, the text cursor thing. Did you understand what I said? And no is the first one, and then you accidentally hit no, and then you have to listen to the whole.
And then you have to listen to it.
But knowing Nintendo, like that's on purpose. That's on purpose because that information is really important. But
sure,
I could see them being so short-sighted that they just didn't test, and they didn't think that was important enough to like put in, or they didn't think it was going to be a big problem. And then I can instead of just mashing A until my inventory is out of clams, I could definitely picture them making the mistake of, you have to like find your place in the catalog over and over again, and it's at least they make it so that bait stacks in your inventory. It has like stacks of 10. But I've been trying to find one of the fish that go away at the end of March, and I did yesterday. I must have gone through maybe like 200 bait trying to make that fish spawn.
Dang.
Because you can only spawn it on the upper levels of your island. Islands have multiple levels of elevation. You can only spawn it on the upper levels of elevation. So instead of walking back and forth along my river and waiting for fish to spawn, you just get a bunch of bait. You sit there and you wait for a big enough shadow, and essentially you just chase off all the fish that aren't big enough, So, but like I said with the quality of life thing, like they're 7 out of 10 there. If I could just craft multiples of bait, my experience would be a lot less like awkward, because you're just sitting there for like 20 minutes mashing A and being like, okay, I'm gonna make like 60 bait, 100 bait, whatever, then go sit at a watering hole. I think it's only just because it's like I said, I'm really bad for fear of missing out, so I don't want a fish to go away at the end of the month, and then
gotcha
and then I have to wait. Like, I'm gonna look it up right now, when that fish comes back. They also made a really bad decision to launch it midway through March and then have multiple things leave by the end of March.
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me.
it's December to February in like previous games. I think this wiki hasn't been like updated. It's December to March in New Horizons. So like I would have to wait like April, May, June, July,
9 months,
August, September, August, September, October, November. I don't know. For some reason, I always forget. Like I always screw up the months during that last little stretch. I have to wait 8 months in order to finish like my fishing, like encyclopedia, and that's not something I really want to opt into doing. You know.
Gotcha.
That would be a time traveling.
That's fair.
That would be a time traveling like justification for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
This wasn't
everyone having their own reasons.
This wasn't supposed to be an Animal Crossing podcast, but it kind of turned into one.
I mean, also just because like I know so little about the game. Like I'm very ignorantly happy with where I am in the game. Like I was talking, I was posting on Twitter yesterday or 2 days ago about how I'm like air quotes behind, but I'm totally cool with it. I've sold stuff that I could have been using better or whatever. But so I was just curious because I know you know so much about the game. So
it's
serendipity.
I'm not.
It's not that I'm like purposely ignoring information. It's just if I can find it, great. If I don't, like I'm fine. Like for instance, like you mentioned, so I've been seeing a lot of people in the same boat as you, like trying to catch. Which fish is it?
It's a stringfish.
Disappears.
It's the string. Well, it's the stringfish. There's like a couple wikis.
There's a couple, right?
There's a couple like different wikis and pages that basically say this is what's new this month. This is what's leaving this month. And it's not like I'm.
Gotcha.
It's not like I'm going through the entire catalog and trying to catch every fish that's available. That even the ones that aren't leaving. No. It's more of just I just want to get the ones that are leaving at the end of March because it's the 31st today when we're recording this. So it's the last day of March. And it's like I just want to get that done. So I don't like I said don't have to wait 8 months. Because for the golden net and the golden fishing rod, which are quality items, I guess in the game, you have to catch everything once and not donate it to your museum. You have to catch it. So, that's the thing is like I said, if I'm gonna miss out on something, I have to wait 8 months. It's like fudge. But the game at least gives you an option because I think that the hemispheres, like when you start a game, it asks you, what hemisphere are you in? Are you in the northern or southern hemisphere? And I think the part of the reason why they do that is to make it so that if you miss out on a fish in your northern hemisphere, you can find someone with a southern hemisphere island that it still has it there. They're not like completely mirrored, I think, in terms of their schedules, but I think there's a good chance that if I'm in the northern hemisphere and it's gone from my island, I can find someone that I can go to their island and get the fish that I missed.
That's a good point. That's clever. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like you said though, it's like you feel that you're behind, and I think that's only like the first week.
Well, I don't feel behind. So that's why I put it in quotes when I posted on Twitter because I don't actually feel behind. But like that's the discussion that is currently going on online. So I put it out there for any other people that might feel behind. So the whole point was like all these people are posting about, I got to catch this fish that's disappearing in March. And while in other games, like I'm all about like finding the details on wikis and whatnot, I just read that and I was like, oh, I guess there's a fish that disappears at the end of March. Great. If I miss it, I guess I'm waiting till next year. And I just sat there and I was like, that's cool. I wonder what it is. And I just moved on. So I posted that more for like other people who actually feel kind of pressured or whatever, in that like that's okay. But if you want to put in the effort to catch it, I guess, quote unquote, on time, like that's fine too. Right. It's just kind of play your way. So that was why I put it there. But yeah, I've actually been like, I was kind of worried once I started seeing those posts that I would feel that I was behind and, I'd start playing it a different way or quote unquote, air quotes, grinding the game. But I haven't been. And so I'm pretty satisfied with where I am.
It's very much serendipity. Like
still pretty raw and empty.
Yeah. It's serendipity of the game. It's you feel uplifted by the things that you discover by chance. And
yeah, exactly.
That's the the meat of it. And like you said, there's a bunch of people like me. There's like super power gamers that will, excuse me. There's super power gamers that will time travel and just try to experience as much of the game as possible. There are people like me who don't try time travel but still are looking up like a lot of information and are completionists because we know what Animal Crossing is. Like, we've experienced that serendipity before, and we know what the point is, but we want to kind of be efficient with it because we know what the potential is for things missing. And then there are people who aren't necessarily looking things up but are just experiencing as it comes, and I think that's the ideal way to do it, especially if it's your first game.
Right.
Because that's how the game should be played, I guess. Or like the game should be played at least once, I think, is the way to do it. I
think that's fair.
Have you ever played the Persona games, the Persona like RPGs?
I've actually only played Persona 5.
So you know that like with the whole social link thing, and it's both a schedule where you have a calendar like that isn't real time. But you have in-game days that go through like a year. But in a lot of those days, you can choose who you spend time with and who you develop relationships with. And in a 72, like for me, my playthrough took 72 hours and like out of game, obviously. But I followed a guide for who to interact with on every day so that by the end of the game, the idea is that you're supposed to play through it multiple times, and on subsequent playthroughs, all your progress with certain people stay. You know, like if you're at a level 7 out of 10 with one person, if you create a new game plus, that'll stay, or it'll at least be easier to get back up to that point sooner. For me with these games, especially I played Persona 4, the remake of Persona 4, or the enhanced edition or whatever, and Persona 5, and all three of them have done the same thing, and I feel like I'm robbing myself of the intended way to play the game, which is choosing who you want to chill with, finding the like interesting person that you want to develop a relationship with, and then you can do that on your own schedule. For me, I'm looking almost at these games as like ways to like just finish it, and I want to experience the entire game and everyone's storyline all in one playthrough. But because I'm doing that, and because you have to follow a guide so strictly in terms of who you're interacting with, you miss out on a large part of the game. And a large part of the game is, making those choices for yourself. And a lot of people, because of that system, like the social link system, they tend to have a very emotional attachment to the Persona games. Yeah, and the people behind it, or the characters in it. And I keep feeling, and I think like if Persona 6 ever comes out, I need to just play it blind, and I need to not do that, because every time I do it, I'm like, okay, well, I experienced the entire game, but I feel like I've lost so much in the process. I feel like I've avoided the purpose of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think I can see what you're saying. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say it has to be that extreme, but I can see how you might feel that way for sure. I have not done that with Persona 5, but then again, that was my very first Persona, so I just I didn't really know what to expect, right? So there was a part of me that kind of freaked out, and I was like, oh shoot, like, can I mess this up? Like, to me sometimes, so my biggest fear in certain games, and I just want to touch upon this before I move on, but is if RPGs don't let you ever reset like your stats or your points, right? That you can put it like that always freaks me out, because if that's true, I'm like, okay, well now I need to look it up. Yeah, because I can't mess this up. So that was my only fear. But once I figured out that it's not that extreme, obviously you can't like reset your social progress with certain characters or whatever, but it's more of it's kind of an additional layer. I was like, okay, I guess I'll just like kind of play it out and choose as I go, and I enjoyed it. Persona 5 was actually one of those games that was very surprising to me, because I knew it had such a like core following, and I just had never played it, again partly due to the systems I grew up with and so the consoles I grew up with, and so it was one of those pleasant surprises for me. and also one of the games that got me really back into wanting to play more JRPGs of different styles, because it had been such a drought of JRPGs, because I played really old JRPGs on the old Nintendo systems, and then hadn't really had any because I then only owned either Nintendo or PC games. But actually, as we're talking about that, I thought it was interesting because we were talking about so many games that have this like really hardcore following and how we were experiencing them different ways. And originally we wanted to kind of maybe touch upon guilty pleasures we have within gaming, or maybe even a broader aspect of hobbies. Are there any? Well, okay, so when we're saying guilty pleasures, just so we're all on the same page, we're talking about like games we might still enjoy despite them perhaps not being regarded that highly, right? Just the standard definition of that.
Yeah, it's there's a funny I listened to another podcast where I listened to another podcast about pro wrestling, and that's my guilty pleasure, and maybe I'll get into it, maybe I won't, at least on this podcast. But one of the things that they do is they talk about pro wrestlers that it's like a criteria where they can't be too, like, they're guilty pleasures in the sense that they're not too popular, and they're not very like good, and they call it their boy stable, and they say, okay, these are my boys, these are the people that aren't successful. I think the three criteria is that they can't be popular, they can't have won a major championship, and they can't have any reasonable expectation of success. You have to be a little bit embarrassed in order to like them. And I've been trying to port this over to esports. I've been trying to port this over to like players or teams in esports where like that they're not going to win the big one, but you still have like a fandom for that. And the difference is I've very much hesitated because you don't want to be mean to anyone in person. You don't want to just be like, I don't ever think you're going to win a championship, so you're my boy, and so it's very difficult to discuss this because you're like, oh, I could actually hurt some real people's feelings in the process, and I don't want to do that. So, but it's kind of the same thing where guilty pleasures, it's like, it's something that you enjoy and you realize it's jank. You realize it's not particularly like well done, or it isn't like, I don't want to say artistically, like, it's something that you're a little embarrassed to talk about. I think there has to be that element of shame to it, maybe. But maybe you don't have any shame about it, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. With games,
that there's some aspect of I guess there's that some aspect of I know what people are gonna say.
Oh,
but
yes.
That doesn't mean you have to change your opinion. But I know what's coming. Yeah. I might still say it because I'm proud of it, but like I know what to expect in terms of response, and it's not going to be great.
Yeah, you have a defense already built in. Like the person that you're talking to could be completely accepting of it, but you already have a defense just in case they're not. Which I think is kind of important. You've built it up in your head why it's okay for you to like that thing.
Right.
So who's gonna go first? Both of us are stalling now. Both of us are stalling to avoid. I
don't think I've had too many. I think I've had like niche games, right? But they were in fact like just so not played that it was hard for them to be guilty pleasures per se. Just more unknown games, but. I would say currently, I think this would count actually, just given the state of the game and also what it's gone through, is The Division. Like I've been streaming it a lot. The Division 2 in its current state. I've been streaming a lot. I've been playing it. But for me, more so than Division 2, because I think just that one has a bigger player base than the original. The original Division, it had a lot of hype building up before release. It had a really cool trailer. And then it released, and as with most games, what we got was not what we thought we were getting from the trailer, and it got a lot of hate. And then people got to the end game, and like there have just been complaints since that point in this brand, in this IP, until like even today. And even people who have been playing it for a long time, just like a lot of my friends who played Division 1 ended up not getting Division 2. They all stopped playing Division 1 way back when we were still playing it. But I've always been, and I always say this, and like you said, I always kind of have a defense in mind when I open up about it. But I actually liked Division 1 from day one, and there was never a point where I disliked it. There's always bugs or quality of life things that you might want changed, and it's not that I never had any complaints or that I thought the game was perfect, but that was one of those games. Okay, so that was one of those games where a lot of the bugs actually made it a little more endearing for me in a lot of ways, unless it pertained to like server connection, because then you just couldn't play it. And so I always had to have a list of reasons of why I enjoyed it, and usually most people would have retorts, but I could always feel proud knowing that at least I gave my reasons and that they are true and that I enjoyed it. And it always makes me sad when I see that IP getting a lot of like controversy or hate or whatever else it might be, like negativity towards it. Because I don't know, I just think it's still a really cool game. Every time I stream it, my stream viewers know, and they're probably sick of it by now. Every time I stream it, I always go on a mini rant of, I don't know why people hate this game. And I talk about what I love about it. Game, yeah. Yeah, and I'm just enjoying it. I like play alone, and it's supposed to be played in squads, and I'm like, I still think it's fun solo. And I'm like, maybe I'm almost trying to convince myself. But The Division is probably one of the most like recent IPs where I could say that that's one where I kind of stand on the other side of the fence and I'm okay with it.
I think once an IP kind of endears itself to you, it like, especially with games as a service games, I think people tend to like view them as a job, or not view them as a job, but like they view them as like, okay, this is like the one that I'm committed to. And especially like that's why you kind of see a lot of like militancy about like, letting the developers know that their game is shit, because if I'm expected to be here for updates and grinding and whatever, like I can stand a little bit of grinding, but if the experience is garbage along the way, and you're kind of stuck there because your friends are playing it and you're not really going to leave, that's the big catch-22, right? Is that, okay, I really kind of dislike this experience, but all my friends are here. It's it's Facebook. It's
right.
I would delete my Facebook, but I'm expected to use it for Messenger and like family and stuff like that. So I'm going to complain about Facebook, even though I'm kind of locked in to continue using it. So I can understand that. That's the Division's like aesthetic is very similar to a comic series I really like called DMZ. Where it's it's currently being made into an HBO thing, I think. So it's one of those things in like a couple years, people will probably be like, oh, I've seen the HBO or the TV series of DMZ, but I was here first as a hipster, clearly. But like that, like urban warfare kind of like, not post-apocalyptic, but urban warfare anyway, is something that kind of interests me, and seeing how people still like the mix of like military versus like civilian life still going on in those zones.
Right.
That's something that very much interests me. But I don't know. I don't. Ubisoft games are very much like hit and miss with that kind of stuff. Where like,
true.
I think I always feel that there's like a expiry date on all like Ubisoft like games as a service games, where it's like, especially like the Tom Clancy like ones, where it's like,
which makes me so sad.
Ghost Recon Wildlands, and then it's like Ghost Recon's whatever things, and it's like, I get it. It's just they have a very successful formula of, you put it out, you give like a couple major expansions, and then like in a year or two you do the next one, and so that's why I'm a little hesitant to like even try the Division, because I'm not willing to get into it full time, like not full time, but I'm not ready for it to be like my main game. And I know that there's this kind of like weird like expiry date looming that means I don't want to waste my time. And I think that goes back to like I said, Animal Crossing and power gaming and stuff, and people like, and missing out on a fish for a year. It's like people just don't want to waste their time. And the older that you get, the you're like, okay, there's so many different things that are like pulling in different directions right now. If I'm like with Persona, it's like, if I'm going to sit down and I'm going to commit myself to this RPG, I want to experience all of it at once. I don't want to have to do multiple 72-hour playthroughs in order to experience all of it. So I'm going to gimp the actual experience by just using a walkthrough. But on the guilty pleasure side, I think my two guilty pleasures are Dynasty Warrior games, so like Muso games, where essentially you're one man against an army, one woman against an army, and the cannon fodder of the opposing army are just there to like just die. They do not pose a threat whatsoever. And there are some good ones and there are some really bad ones. And the thing is that the base experience is so similar that you probably don't know it's a bad one until you've spent like a dozen hours on it. And then you're like, oh, this is just terrible. It doesn't help that Koei Tecmo, like the company that makes them and like licenses out the formula. So you'll have the Dynasty Warriors, which is set in like Three Kingdoms, Japan, but then you've got like One Piece and Zelda. There's a Zelda one.
Right.
The licensed ones tend to be a little better, where like the One Piece one and the Zelda one are probably the best ones. But some of the other ones are like, hey, do you like $800 worth of DLC that are costumes for, you know, the female officers that we've made into waifus?
Goodness.
You know, it's like, okay, they're very hit or miss, but the formula of it. I played Dynasty Warriors 4 for the PS2, and I think that's the feeling that I keep catching on, is like I want to rekindle that, like the obsession, or not the obsession, but the like those games are made to last for a very long time. You can get a lot of play hours out of them just doing the same things and hoping for weapon drops or trying a new officer out of the roster or whatever. So they're good budget titles, and I played the hell out of Dynasty Warriors 4 when I was younger, and that's kind of the feeling I keep chasing. But the other one that has more of an embarrassment factor is I'm a big sucker for romance in games. I'm a big sucker for like having dating mechanics or having marriage mechanics or whatever. Like I love the Harvest Moon games for that. I love I played Harvest Moon 64 as a kid a lot, and besides the simulation aspect of having your own farm, I did like the relationship building aspect of it with, you know, the marriage candidates or the people in the town or that kind of stuff. I think I'm a romantic. I like a good romance storyline. I like seeing the payoff of like, you know, that flirting between two characters, or the like, you know, will they won't they. I like seeing that payoff, and especially in games where I can influence that or have it be like an immersive thing. Obviously, like, you know, I'm not the extreme end where some people like use that as a replacement for actual, you know, relationships or friendships or whatever. Right. That's my embarrassed prefacing, you know. That's the defense that I have built up, where it's like, oh, no, I'm not one of those creepy waifu dudes. You know, I'm not one of those creepy like guys who like treats them as their actual wife. I just like romance in games, man. I like, you know, I like cute shit, you know. So like I said, that's the defense that I have. That's the reflex, you know, of being nervous about it. But I don't know, if a game has some good romance mechanics, that enhances my experience a lot. I like that.
Do you ever find yourself in like a conundrum though? Because like, so maybe just character bit wise, you would like to see a certain like relationship work out, but maybe like gameplay wise, it's not the best choice. It doesn't. Okay.
Yeah. If in an RPG, if you can have your like relationship or your relationship target character be in your party, usually that happens for me. Like in Persona, if you wanted to, you know, do a social link with one of your your party members, your female party members, and you have the option to romance them. It's like, oh, okay, you want to experience the game as much as possible with them in a prominent role, you know. So you wouldn't like romance someone that you're just going to keep on your bench forever, because sure, you might, you know, there might be benefits to doing it, but that can further your relationship or whatever. But there's also just like, okay, I want to hear, you know, I want to hear their voice lines, or I want to like hear what I'm thinking about. Like Mass Effect, you have like a party of 7, but if you're trying to romance someone in your party, you don't want to leave them on the bench, because if you're taking them on a mission, they might have a vocal line, or they might have something that unlocks because you have a certain degree of friendship or whatever with them. And so that kind of like affects my playstyle a little bit, where that happens. But also, like, I think another factor of that is that it depends on the game, because like some Harvest Moons and stuff, their art is so like cutesy or like too like chibi or anime, where it's like, okay, I'm not going to get into like relationshipy development stuff with this because the art style just like does nothing for me and it feels very awkward. So that's another factor of it, where sometimes it's like, it's not that, oh, a game has romance options, I'm just going to instantly be down into it. It's more of, okay, I have to kind of be feeling the game and its aesthetic and art style in order to engage in all aspects of its function, I guess, is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. I just asked that question because that's when we're like, that's like the part I hate the most from Harvest Moon, because I always get stuck in this rut of like, man, character wise, like I kind of want to romance this character, but I'm like, but is like, does that make sense in the grand picture I'm drawing for my character as a game versus a story? Like I always, and Harvest Moon is one of those games where like that would matter the least compared to party RPGs in terms of like.
Yeah, no, with Harvest
well,
Moon,
in terms of like combat and like day-to-day activities, right? Like it obviously influences your gameplay, but and so because if anything for me, if there's, for instance, whether it's like the Fire Emblems, I never played Mass Effect, but Fire Emblems or other games where there's a direct stat impact, it's actually easier for me because I'm like, ignore the story, go for the better stat.
Yeah, man,
right?
Eugenics Simulator. It's Eugenics Simulator 2019.
Yeah, exactly. But then anytime the story actually kind of feels even, I guess, in terms of what I expect from the game and what satisfaction I expect from the game, I actually get stuck and I'm like, man, I actually just wish I either couldn't romance them or there was like a much more direct, just by far better advantage and like a win condition, so to speak, for romancing someone. So I just had to ask because it's a different situation I find myself in with those games.
Well, especially with Fire Emblem, or like there's a conundrum, right? It's that you can either make the relationship really well written and really well developed, or but that requires like development resources, and that requires like maybe more voice acting or more animations or more, like it might bloat out the game to the point where something that is supposed to be a side option isn't a thing. And with but the converse to that is something like Fire Emblem, where it's like, okay, we have dozens of characters and you can romance a lot of them, but they aren't particularly well written, or maybe they're just generic, where maybe certain relationships read the exact same, or have the same kind of dialogue, and it's like, okay, well then it's just throwaway. Why engage in the system that wants me to connect emotionally when you're not really giving me anything? So I don't know. I could rant about it all day because like there's obviously like good examples of like good relationship games and bad ones, but maybe that's a topic for another time. I don't know. Like I said, it's always you're hesitant to bring it up, or you're hesitant to like talk about it because you're like, oh, please don't think I'm a weirdo. Please, I swear I'm normal. But I don't know. I think that's a good place to cut it for the week. I don't know. Will, where are you up to this week? Like, what are you playing?
This week, well, I mean, we're getting into April, and for a lot of gaming fans, this April is one they've been waiting for a long time, including myself. So there's a lot to look forward to. Resident Evil 3 remaster or remake, I don't know what they're calling it, is coming out. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII remake is coming out. I'm super excited for that as someone who never fully played through the original. Loved the demo. And the Valorant beta is obviously talk of the town right now, especially among esports people. I mean, I'll definitely have to try to get my hands on it, but I'm actually struggling to try to imagine how I'm going to balance all of that on top of obviously like other work I have to do. So That, and then obviously just tending to my island and hopefully making it a little cleaner.
Nice. Yeah, man. It's about chopping trees and cleaning weeds, and somehow that's a very satisfying gameplay loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. Like I'm more likely to not engage with Final Fantasy VII, I think, until the game is done. Like the whole game is done.
Fair.
I think that's one of those things where I don't feel any FOMO whatsoever, and I'm kind of just because I've got so many JRPGs to like go through in backlog wise, that I'm not super excited because I never really I haven't finished the original, and I'm not like a huge Final Fantasy fan. I'm more a Dragon Quest kind of guy, and that's something that we'll maybe touch on later. But I'm just still playing Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal. I'm playing a little bit of Doom, and that's fun. I'm not as a lot of people are just like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm like super into it, and I'm just like, okay, it's. I think I like 2016 a little bit more, like the Doom that came out in 2016. I think I'm a little bit more into that, but it's one of those things where my feelings are kind of changing on it day to day. So I'm just playing it for the love of it, or like for the. I'm not trying to make content around it or whatever. I'm just enjoying it as it is. So other than that, I'm not really up to that much. So I guess we'll, I'll see you next week in the craziness that is April, and we will clearly be through the looking. I hate April 1st on the internet. April 1st on the internet is the worst.
Yeah.
Blah. If I can say anything to anyone listening that might be like in charge of anything like that, don't make something that people actually might want as your April Fool's joke. Don't mock up a product or like joke about a product that someone may actually want, because then you get double disappointed. You get disappointed that you've been tricked, and then you get disappointed that this thing doesn't exist. And it's like, let's just not. Anyways,
that's fair.
Yeah, from Toronto and Korea. Good morning, good night. I keep forgetting the order. I don't know why I'm so bad at this.
You just have to say good morning and I'll say good night, or vice versa.
I know. So thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.